Finally, it is time to sew the sock together. There's a seam, and some do not like seams, but others do not like knitting in rounds. So if you are somebody who doesn't like working in rounds, this project would be something to try. We are now going to sew the seam on the back in a way that will give us a flat seam that our sock slipper will still be comfortable to wear. There are other styles where the seam is on the side, and we can look at those in the future. Let's finish this one. This one is super friendly for beginners, and that's why I chose for us to do this one. We're going to start at the toe, and we are going to thread the needle into this long yarn tail we left at the end after casting off. Remember, we are doing this inside out. You will fold at the shaping. See here? So in the middle of the shaping is where I fold. And also here in the middle of the shaping is where I fold. Now the first thing I'm going to do is close the gap here. Okay, now I'm going to make sure that I hold this with my fingers flat, and I'm going to walk my yarn to the edge, which means I'm going to go slowly through and back through, somewhat like a running stitch, but make sure you're only catching the chain of the cast off. Now my yarn was walked to the edge. I'm going to put the needle through this edge of the chain. Now I'm going to mimic knitting. I will go through the left of one side and the right of the other. Pull through and come down here. See how it's like a knitted stitch? I will come down here and up into the middle, so right there. Now I will do the same again for one more stitch mimicking the knit. Here is that chain. I'm going to take the inside of this chain stitch and inside of the other. I come like this on this side, then on the other side to mimic a knit stitch. See how it came this way? I came under, now I come here and right up in the middle. And I am pretend knitting with my sewing needle. Yes, there are professional names for these types of stitches. I want you to focus on the task, not the name for right now. I want you to have fun with this, not worrying about the names. Okay, so here I pick this up and pick this up. Go through. It's like a pretend knit stitch. I come here, come up in the middle for the next one. See how nicely they're stacking up? Very nice. And it feels like I have knitted. Go around, under, come back here, up in the middle for the next one. Okay, we just have a couple more to finish this toe seam. When I come to the end, I don't really want another knit stitch. I'm just going to go in and out to secure it. And then I need to walk my yarn to the middle so that I can start sewing this seam. We are going to use our pretend knitting skills we have just started to learn to do this. So walking the yarn, remember, it's a little bit like a running stitch. I might want to rethink my surface here. It's cozy and soft and white, but it seems to be getting in the way of my sewing here. Okay, here we are. We are ready for our pretend knitting. With the sewing needle, you line up the stitches of the edge chain like so. Have them nice and flat. You can further go like this, but it's harder to see. So I like to let them lay flat like this because it's easier for me to see them. And now I can catch the outside of the chain so that the seam will close in like that. Okay? So I'm here in the middle. The first chain is right here. I'm going to go around, under, back down. Yes, you can sew in other ways. I'm just showing you this difficult way because it's really going to make it look like a knitted line, and also will make it feel comfortable and flat. Okay, so there we are. Now I need to come back up in the middle. Here is the next one. Go from the outside. You went around, come down, and in the middle for the next stitch. Now, depending on how gentle you are with your sewing, you might be just fine not catching the bottom of the sock, but you might also want to consider sliding in a piece of paper like this. Or if you have one of those sock shaping pieces of wood, this will be a great time to use it. But either way, find a way to be careful to not sew together the top and the bottom of the sock. I'm moving very slowly so that you can see what it is that I'm doing and have a chance to try this stitch yourself. You can see here, just looks like you did a purl stitch on the other side. You know, I learned all of this work from my mother, and she would say now that this process will be much easier if you take a little extra step, and you might already be doing this, which is to press and iron your work before you start sewing. Now that requires some skill, and we will look in some future more complex projects on how to do that. It's not going to make a lot of difference in this project, but in some projects it will make a lot of difference. So we will make sure to look at that as well. For right now, focus on learning this process and feeling it. Once you have a feel for it, it will start to flow. So you can see why there is really a good reason to leave a long thread of yarn after you have cast off or when you're casting on for projects like these. You didn't have to make a knot. You didn't have to join a new piece of yarn. You just start sewing. Or pretend knitting. This stitch that does have a professional name. I will call it pretend knitting to help you think of the flow of your yarn thread as you create each stitch, for it has to look like you're knitting. Some of you may really dislike the way I'm calling it, so please add to the comments the way you prefer to call this approach to sewing. And if you're just learning, have fun reading the comments and ask questions as you're working. So I'm going to work this till I run out of this thread. Then I will start from the opposite end of the sock and meet where that falls. Should you run out of yarn sooner than that, you will join a new piece, weave in the ends, like we have learned in other projects to do. Now you see here how I have skipped. So watch out for that. You don't want to skip or it will leave a hole. Or if you notice that you do something twice, just go back and undo it. It's much better to take time to undo what went wrong than to wear your sock with constantly being bothered by a double stitch underneath your foot, which you may think sounds like not a big problem, but some days when you really spend a lot of time on your feet, it might bother you. If you're making these to keep your feet cozy and warm while you're reading or working at your desk, that's probably not going to matter very much. But if you anticipate going in the yard, playing with your pets, gardening, or just working around the house in them, you will really want to make sure that this is flat and soft. I skipped again. And I don't want to cut this out of the video because I want you to see how it is obvious when you skip. If you're paying attention, it will look very long and stretched. So I'm coming to the end here. I'm going to go walk this back and weave in the end. Again, I don't want to make a big knot, so I want to weave it in. Now I'll turn to go from the other side. This is what I want you to pay attention to first. You know that this will be a fold over, so that means it's going to look like this. That also means that I have to be aware of that when I'm sewing the seam. While I'm going to sew the seam here this way, my cuff, I have to sew it the other way so it will go in and out. So let's turn the sock inside out. We can already see the fruits of our work. We can feel the nice and flat seam on the bottom. It looks like a purl stitch and it feels very flat and comfy. So it's worth that extra work, that slow, patient, fake knitting. Okay? So now, this will be the pretty side. So I have to put that together. And I will do some fake knitting from this edge. First, closing the gap here. Okay, here we go. Come through the middle. And this time I don't want to go here. I want to go here. And you will see how different it will look. We're not going to have that purl stitch seam on the other side. We will just have the edge joined together. And you get to learn what it looks like when you do it a little differently. And remember, these are projects which you can follow like you would follow a pattern, but also think about these skills in ways in which you can put them to work in other projects. You might encounter them in other patterns, and I really hope they'll inspire you to feel creative and just create your own versions. And invent your own names, like pretend knitting and so on. It's way more fun when you let yourself create, adapt. Maybe you're starting with a pattern that you kind of like, but not fully. So hopefully what you are learning through these projects will give you some ideas on how you can adapt the patterns and customize them to make them more of what you want. And to never feel intimidated to make something. If you don't feel ready to make socks, that's okay. So here we are. We have our pearls meeting our knits, and the texture is preserved. On the other side, we have a nice straight line of the finishing. Now we turn it inside out again. pretend knit the rest of this seam. What I'm going to do is I'm going to weave this end in right here below the cuff. Pretending I'm knitting over to follow the stitches of the pattern. If you really want to make a knot here below the cuff, you can do that. It's going to look like this. Okay, so now we need to close this. We will join new yarn. I would suggest joining it on here so that you finish up at the cuff. But you can go the other way as well. Either way, you will want to join it cleanly and flat by weaving it in and not making a knot. To keep going in the same orientation of this pretend stitch, I'm going to join it here. I will come through the middle of one of the stitches. We'll lay it flat like this. Then I'm going to weave it in by sewing over it. So you see how I'm sewing over. I'm going over and under. Now I come back here. I do the same thing. I'm gonna go over my tail and then under and through, following the stitch I made earlier. And now I'm ready to put this in the middle here to start my next. We continue in the same way. At this point, I'm going to let you work on your own because the process continues to be the same. At the end, you will weave in the end just like we have learned to do already, and you will be ready to wear your socks. Share with us in the comments the colors and patterns you created from this one. Or the questions you're coming up with as you're working. Share what other things you'd like to knit too. And do remember to subscribe and chime in the community tab with your comments and wishes for new projects. My hope is really to know what you are inspired to create, but would like some guidance through. And that is how the channel now has both socks and tiny animal knits and knitting in the round. And soon we will have a beginner sweater that's knitted in the round. Many more projects coming. So do stay in touch, do comment. I read all of your comments and do my best to answer all of your questions. And enjoy creating and wearing your knitted treasures. Some of you may wonder why I'm making it look like the purl stitch on the other side and knit stitch on the inside. Couldn't I have done this from the outside? And the answer is absolutely yes, I could have. I'm imagining that many of those watching this video will be beginners and doing this stitch for the very first time. So it is much less intimidating to have a design that lets you practice on the inside when you're doing something for the first time, than having to practice on the outside. So that is why this specific project places this stitch on the inside. But yes, you could definitely also do this from the outside and have a beautiful chain and a purl on the inside. Both will look great. If you have done this before and you're not worried about the process, by all means, turn it around and do the same from the outside so you have all knit stitches from the outside. Adapt the design to fit what you like. I hope you're having fun pretend knitting with your sewing needle. We're almost done. Now you can also imagine how this way of seaming makes it easy to undo your sock should you need to make any mends and sew it back in place without unraveling the whole thing. When you invest time, care, and attention into creating your handmade garments and accessories, you will want to also think ahead about times when they may need some mending. For these become such treasures and you grow to love them so much that you will not want to just replace them because they need a little bit of mending. All right, time to weave in the end. See, I have 1, 2, 3, then I go weave under and over. And cut it off. Time to turn it inside out. There's our purl stitch. Feels very soft. Gonna play with my socks and my hands a little bit just to show you. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed this adventure in this type of sock design. And if you have been intimidated to knit in the rounds, I hope this gives you an invitation to make your own pair of socks without knitting in the round. And if you just would like to see what it's like to do this type of project, I hope you'll give it a try. I think I will keep knitting socks in the round, but I also think there are times when this might be something I'll do again, especially if I'm designing a project to teach someone the anatomy of the sock, or if I want to knit something very easy and fast. This might be a project to go to. See you in the next knitting adventure.